Hi guys, I hope you're good. I hope you're well rested and excited for our lesson today. Guys, we are still doing factorization, and what I have for you today is something very exclusive. This is very rare. It's for those rare occasions, okay? And we call this grouping 3 and 1. So this method, you don't always get it. I have to repeat this all the time. You don't always get it, but I'm equipping you with information that you will need whenever you're struggling with factorization. Always bring it back. Okay, just try to think about this one. So it's called grouping 3 and 1, and this is how we use 3 and 1. So the first part of our lesson uh, tries to unpack what actually grouping 3 and 1 means. So if an expression consists of 4 terms, okay, so we need to have at least 4 terms, and part of it is a perfect square. So we have two conditions so far: 4 terms and perfect square. Then the expression can be factorized by grouping 3 and 1. So it means grouping 3 and 1, guys, you are grouping the first 3 terms because they're a perfect square, and also isolating the last term. So I have an example ready for you, and please grab your pen and paper because you will need this, okay? So the first example looks at how grouping 3 and 1 works. So you are given ax squared, a squared minus 6a plus 9 minus 16y. And the first thing that you need to do is to introduce brackets to the first part. So you introduce brackets to the first part. The moment you introduce brackets to the first part, guys, so you are only left now with what? With a squared minus 6a plus 9. And if you want to factorize this, a squared minus 2ab plus b squared. So this is the method that we use, okay? We use this method to factorize that value. So what happened there is factors of a squared minus 6a plus 9 are a minus 3, and then you close your bracket, minus 4y squared. Now guys, I want to unpack this thing for you and write it for you. How did you move from this to that? If you take aside a squared minus 6a plus 9 and you try to factorize that, you have to open two brackets. Factors of a will be a and a. Factors of the last term, that when you add or subtract they give you the middle term, will be 3 and 3. And which signs can we use to get negative 6? It's negative and negative. So since you have, for example, if you had, let me write it in a different pen. If you had x and x, you can write this as x squared. Now the same thing happens here since we have a minus 3 and a minus 3, so it means we have the same thing. So we can easily write it as a minus 3 squared. That is why you found yourself up there with that. Okay, so that's where it's coming from. So you factorize using the normal polynomials factorization. Okay, so you factorize that, but the moment you see that you have two values that look the same, you just choose one and say it's all squared. Now once you have such a value, you have to say that you have also, look at 16. 16 can also be written in the form of 4. Let me just write it down there. In the form of 4 to the power of 2. Also, y can be written in the form of y to the power of 2. So if you want y times y, right? Now, if you have that, so it means you can simply write this as 4y all to the power of 2. So you've just factorized. That is why you find yourself with this there. So since, guys, we remember that we opened two brackets at the beginning, so you are spreading your values there. And you also need to break down the values of 4. So it means you're going back to factorizing using difference of two squares. So you need to bring down 4y and another 4y there. But the signs must not be the same. The signs must always change, okay? So guys, this is how you do this whole thing, okay? You first group the first three values, find factors of those three values, and make sure they are the same factors, okay? That's why we need perfect squares. So if you have found perfect squares now, you also focus on the last term, which is 1. So that's why we call 3 and 1. So once you've also found factors of the third term, of the last term, so it means now you go back into using the difference of two squares method. So once you have the difference of two squares method, you now break it down, and also factorizing, making sure that you use opposite signs for the last term only. So the first three terms must always have their normal signs that you got when you're factorizing. However, the last term must have two opposite signs. That is why you see on our problem there, we have plus and minus, specifically for the 4y, okay? Now let's do our second example. So you have x squared minus y squared plus 10y minus 25. So we group also here 3 and 1. Now, someone will ask, how do I choose that I'm grouping the first 3 or the last 3? You need to look at common values most of the time, and making sure that whenever you're going to factorize those values, they will give you perfect values, all right? So we saw on this one that we do not have x as my second value. So I only have x squared there, but the rest has y. Then I cannot use x, I cannot group these first three terms, okay? So you are going to leave x squared alone and go and factorize what? And go and group the last three terms, such that when you factorize those values, guys, this is how you factorize it. So when you factorize, let me write it this side, y squared minus 10y plus 25 can be factorized in this form. You open two brackets, y, and then factors of 25 will be 5 and 5, and we need the same signs for it to give us negative 10, the middle number. So that is why I can write this in the form of y minus 5 to the power of 2. So I've managed to create a perfect square there. And also, if you look at the third step that we have there, the third step, x squared is a perfect square. And now, since I've shown you on the factorization that y minus 5 all squared is also a perfect square, what you do, you open the brackets on the fourth step. So you open the brackets there. So the moment you open the brackets, you break down values of x squared. So that's what you have, x and x. Since we are working with difference of two squares method, it will be plus and minus. See, plus and minus. And then you break down these values, so it's just going to be y minus 5 and y minus 5 there. Now, we need to get rid of many brackets, right? So you're just going to write the first bracket, but with the second bracket, guys, please note that if you have x minus bracket y minus 5, this negative sign there, it is going to affect everything that you have. That is why this sign changed there, because the negative multiplied in there, and that is why you are left with x minus y plus 5. Okay, so guys, as I've emphasized, that this method is very rare. You will, once in a while, you will get this method, but it is very important that you also know it, you also understand it. So you need to have a very good skill in visualizing things. Okay, you need to see what's going on, analyze your problem, calm down, analyze your problem, and see if you just use the grouping in pairs method, and if it doesn't work, group in what, using the 3 and 1 method. Okay, so you can always start with the first 3, or you can work with the last 3. Any 3 and 1, it always works. You go back to your difference of 2 squares method and you are done. Okay guys, so thank you guys for joining me on this lesson on factorizing using the 3 and 1 grouping method. And guys, please practice, and I will definitely see you on the next one.